What makes a bad movie good and a bad movie bad? I thought about this while watching the 80s snooze fest Mad Men. It made me wonder how I could have a good old time with a movie like Deathstalker, but then an 80s cheesy slasher movie like Mad Men could keep me so uninterested that I decided to start writing this script. I got to thinking, how can a film justify itself when all it does is have the actors walking around the woods? Every now and then you'd get something to happen, but that was only after 20 minutes of nothing? Meanwhile, in Deathstalker, something interesting happens in every other scene. Sure, it's a ripoff of Conan the Barbarian with rape, but it has pacing. Every scene adds to the plot and moves fast enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome. There's goofy action scenes, shitty dialogue,
"You don't have anything to eat, do you?"
and a pig man. All of these are engaging while you're not losing focus of its very singular narrative. Back in Mad Men, you don't get that. They struggle to fill the time frame of an hour and 28 minutes, which is a very short movie. This is where I find some B-movies to be so bad they're good, and others so bad that they're just painful to watch. The core to a good bad movie has a few key elements that others don't seem to have. For one, you need to have a cast that gives it their all. The more sincere performances, the funnier the line delivery is. The lines, while all written by somebody else, can come off naturally and with a decent amount of heart. This adds to the authenticity of an actor's performance.
My first name is Wilbur, my last name is Force. I don't have a middle name.
This making any odd mannerisms noticed, and either give them fame or infamy. After all, without natural mannerisms, we wouldn't have somebody like Crispin Glover.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
Take, for example, the movie Samurai Cop. In interviews with the lead actor, Matt Hannon, he stated that,
and I said, all right, well, I'll go over and then I'll look back like, where are you? And then you come under and then I'll go, why'd you come under? And then you say, oh, I'm an undercover cop. That'll be funny. But those are the times where it was just ad lib. But that was kind of where you see more of my personality. Like when I flip the girl's hair in the police station as I'm walking out, I just made that up. It's like stupid.
That mentality brings out natural charm from Matt Hannon and his co-star, Mark Frazier. They have a unique and interesting inflection with their lines, and they also add things that weren't in the script.
Why did you come under? I'm an undercover cop.
This all changes in the later half of the film, when fun is sucked away from them. The performance is now all uninspired, the delivery of these lines no longer having these little personal touches. They just want to get through it, making it feel like there's two different movies taped together to make one long movie.
Are you Fujiyama?
Yes, I am. Who are you?
I'm a cop.
It's literally night and day, and this was intentional, as the director of the film didn't want them to go off script anymore or add any goofy things to it because he was making a serious film.
Yeah, that was a little bit me being a little bit more relaxed, not so rigid like Amir always wanted. Matt be more serious and and normally with an actor, you don't tell them how to say a line because I didn't care because at that point it was like, whatever, how do you want me to say it, like this, like that?
The second key factor is budget. The lower the budget, the less a movie has something to work with. This means resources like good acting, props, special effects, and contracts all have a finite end, and they're all controlled by a number. Some bad movies become good because they overestimate their budget, running it thin and making the flow break due to a lack of funds or actors leaving. Sometimes the creators are so frugal that they cheap out on the sets that they're filming on. In Plan 9 from Outer Space, sets were so cheaply made that Tor Johnson actually gets stuck coming out of the ground when he's supposed to be resurrected as a zombie. This makes the film enjoyable as it elevates it to something funnier. Actors have contracts for specific days worked on set before they leave and the money stops. They can also phone in a performance if they feel underpaid.
I've had dog food.
You have?
Mm-hmm. Long time ago. Doggy chow. Oh, I used to love doggy chow.
Some movies will bring on a stand-in and shoot from afar to get around actors leaving. This can lead to some more unintentionally funny scenes. Again, in Plan 9 from Outer Space, they did this with Bela Lugosi. At the time, Mr. Lugosi had been dead for a while, but Ed Wood still wanted to use pre-recorded footage he had of Mr. Lugosi. To get around the fact that Lugosi was no longer alive, Ed Wood simply used his girlfriend's doctor who was the same height and had the same haircut. He just told the guy to hold Dracula's cape in front of his face to hide the fact that it wasn't Bela Lugosi on set. This then became a running gag that people who later watched the movie would laugh at and elevated the movie from a B-horror movie to something funnier, something more entertaining. Editing also plays a big part in making a bad movie good. In Samurai Cop, there's loads of reaction shots that don't match the scene tonally.
Would you like to go out with me?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to fuck me?
This ties back to budget as well. These reaction scenes were shot late into production after money had run thin, and the director would just tell the actors, okay, now react this way, without giving any context. It leads to some really unintentionally funny scenes. If you're really lucky, the director is a foreigner, and their mannerisms don't translate well to American audiences. Take, for instance, this other famous scene from Samurai Cop. It's a monologue.
Now I'm telling these son of a bitches that we respect the Japanese of this country who are honest businessmen. And yeah, this is the land of opportunity for legitimate business, not for death merchants who distribute drugs to our children through schools and on the streets.
The monologue was filmed later on in production when the actors were just doing their lines to get the filming done with. Iranian director Amar Shavan really thought that American movies sounded like this. To an outside person who isn't from America or even from the UK, this can sound intense and like an Oscar-worthy performance is happening right in front of them. But to anybody who's seen something from Hollywood, this all just sounds unnatural, clunky, and really goofy. A third key factor is if a movie is riffable. Riffing is when you and your pals are watching a shitty piece of media, and you guys make jokes at the movie's expense.
Killdozer with Clint Walker, no!
Oh, wow!
Oh no!
Eat fork, buddy.
He thinks I'm a pallet.
This is where the whole peanut gallery comes from. The peanut gallery refers to people sitting in the cheapest seats the house could offer for a stage show back in frontier times. If the act was bad, the people sitting in the peanut gallery would make comments and toss used peanut shells at the actors on stage. Movies got the modern version of this without any consequences because some people who would go see these movies would make fun of them with their friends when the theater was empty, making that theater-going experience a little bit less painful when the movie was boring and dragging. Riffing is such an integral part of bad movie culture that in big, large-form get-togethers like B-movie festivals, it's highly encouraged. If your movie is so boring you can't even make fun of it and just get mad at it, then you failed at making an entertaining B-movie. Another key element is direction. If the director is lazy, then the movie is lazy. If the director is boring, guess what? You got a boring movie. Don Dohler is a big example of lazy and boring. Most, if not all of his movies, are just people walking around the woods. Why? 'Cause it's cheap. He's lazy and the scripts and direction are soulless. Sure, he can pump out a few scripts and turn a small profit, but in doing so, he makes the most flat-filmed, boring, and tiring experiences you will ever sit through. Don Dohler's movies all have the most boring, drawn-out scenes of people talking in a flat, lifeless shot.
There's nothing to remember, Mr. Kender. Look, if I were you, I'd save my energy and forget about the whole incident.
If you thought Mad Men was boring with its scenes of walking in the forest broken up by random kills, then a Don Dohler film will literally put you to sleep.
Progeria. It's a rare childhood disease that causes an acceleration of the aging process. The skin ages and wrinkles, and the person develops arthritis, arteriosclerosis. The internal organs deteriorate.
The editing isn't interesting either, as it's all streamlined just to tell the story. The camera barely moves and every scene looks like a shot from a stage play. There is some merit to the exciting scenes, but these movies are such a slog to get through, it really doesn't make up for anything. This makes it hard to sit through. Now, if you look at somebody like the late Roger Corman, not only is he able to make a script from a title that's interesting, but he can also be conscious of his budget and use it to give that movie a certain flair. Not all of Corman's films are the most interesting, but a very heavy handful of them meet the requirements of a good bad movie. For instance, one of Mr. Corman's most famous movies is Little Shop of Horrors. Not only was it low budget and barely played in theaters, but the concept was new and went for a more comedy approach, knowing that the resources would be limited. What I mean by limited theatrical run is, the movie was an additional feature with Black Sunday and had little to no advertising for it. Little Shop of Horrors only survived via word of mouth, and even then only got one more theatrical run before being relegated to TV showings. This is where it then gained popularity as a cult classic B movie. The execution they gave was also weird enough that all the actors had their own natural charm and inflections go into each character.
People don't like to go to the dentist, but I rather enjoy it myself, don't you?
Oh, goodbye, Dr. Farr. You may have been a crummy dentist, but you were a nice fella. I never meant to kill anybody in my whole life. I've killed 2 in the last 2 days.
Their lack of major budget allowed some of the movie's flaws to not only be noticed, but laughed at. It's a romp of a good time, elevating the movie concept from more of a dark comedy into just pure comedy. And that's hard to do considering that most, if not all, low-budget comedies just fall into the "it's really bad" category. Nothing is ever funny, it's only funny to the person writing, and the actors are trying to take it either way too goofy or way too serious, making the entire concept for low-budget comedies fall flat on their face. This brings me back to the movie Madman. This film just hits all the marks of a bad B-movie. It's slow-paced.
In the air, the scent of death crawling, full moon the witness.
It's boring. The actors don't really have any natural charm and just read off their lines and do their jobs.
Yeah, I'm fine. I always get quiet when it's over for the season.
It's filmed flat and the location is boring. If your movie is going to be 90% in the woods, then you're already fucked up. There is some funny scenes, like the end where the kid Richie has PTSD, but for the most part, you will zone out hard watching this movie. This was clearly a movie everybody was taking way too seriously, as it was either their first credit or their only credit. Everyone was too stiff and boring to make it very memorable as a funny bad movie. They're just filming shit to fill time to sell you a puddle of goblin piss. You start losing ideas for jokes when you're riffing on it, and just want it to be over. All these other examples I've given, besides the Don Dohler films and Madman, have been B-movies most considered to be so bad that they're good. They even have fan bases and inside jokes elevating the movie's viewing to more than that. It becomes an experience that you cherish and have good memories associated with. It could be one night, you and your pals are so wasted with nothing to do, you pop on a shitty movie you never seen before and it becomes a crowd pleaser. It might become a tradition that you and your pals watch it once a year. Lines become inside jokes that you cherish through your life. The movie may even be something comforting you watch when you really need a pick-me-up. And after all, at the end of the day, that's what really makes a good bad movie.